So if I get out of line, I apologize. You know, here we go. First of all, I want to say thank you. This is our first math night. My hope is that we'll have more. It doesn't necessarily have to be in this forum. It was just easier to have everybody together for the first time to decide what we want to do for the future. As you all know, we have black and red wrestling going on. We had a 300-person chili supper right before this that ended at 6. And then over on the far side in the Fine Arts Center, we have the play starting at 7 o'clock. So it's a busy night here. So I'll try to keep my voice up and not blow you away. But it's going to kind of work like this. I'm going to kind of go through a few things for about 25 minutes. We'll do some activities as we go. But for the first half, we'll kind of work in our groups and talk. And then the second half, we have some door prizes. So make sure that on your table there's a card. All you need is your first and last name. That's all. So we'll pull some cards off. Most of them are just manipulatives, things that you can use at home with your kids with the math. All right? So here's kind of the breakdown of tonight. The first thing we're going to look at is we're going to talk about the why and the how. Math might be seen as something a little bit different. So we're going to go over that. Things that we're doing right now and that we're working on, it's not perfect. But what we do know is that as our times change, so must we. So I'm really working more with you guys as we go through this as that advisory board as we develop this as to what we need to do as far as working with our students at school and then trying to set up some sort of a good resource for you to go to that works best for you. And everybody kind of works things in a little bit different way. We're going to talk about the Parent Advisory Board. The other one is a tool that we're using right now with math. We're going to talk about that. And then we're going to talk about how you can support your child at home with math. I do have a parking lot in the back right behind Dr. Whitehold. There is just a piece of paper there. We have some Post-it notes on your table. If you have one of those burning questions and you're thinking, you know, I want to say it, but I don't want to say it, write it down. Stick it on the wall. We're going to work that. The thing we always work about is this. If we don't have good conversation, we're never going to meet and go to where we want to go. So that's what we want to look at. If it's one of those questions that you think would be easier for us to have a one-on-one or we have a private conversation, that's fine. Put it on the board. If you want me to either call you or email you, make sure that some sort of contact information is on there. And then I will address that as quick as I possibly can. All right? So that's what we have with our parking lot in the back. The other thing is I'm going to look at, we do have a lot of teachers and people that are here. So what I'm going to do is we'll introduce ourselves in a little bit in our tables, but I'm going to kind of start and have each individual person introduce themselves. I'm going to start with myself. My name is Scott Hayes. I have kids in the district. We're out in Beaufort, and I'm the assistant superintendent. I kind of cover curriculum, instruction, and assessment, but that's kind of my jam. You know, I like that. And that's everything from math to science to literacy to writing, reading, art, physics, everything you have, we do. And this is just the first one that we're talking about, and that's our math. So tonight we have a little math flavor, but that's what we're looking at. This is my second year here. We're very excited. We live down YY in that Clover Bottom area. In the section that's Union, just so everybody knows, because, you know, that's the weirdest road I've ever seen in my entire life. Buses are all from all over the place. So we're really happy to be here. I have 4 kids. My oldest is in college. My youngest is, 9 months. So that's my story. Yeah, I know, right? I'm going to start over here with Mr. Rogers. Just name who you are, what you do.
I'm Rob Rogers. I'm the assistant principal at Center.
kindergarten.
Need staff, kindergarten. Ashley Gilbert, first grade.
Casey Taylor, kindergarten central, and Sarah Griffith, kindergarten.
Kelly Bailey, fifth grade, front day.
Oh, Mr. Hoffman.
Zach Hoffman, 7th, 8th grade.
Pauline Simon, third grade, central.
Good God.
Sarah Fisher, sixth grade, central. Lynn County, second grade, central. Amanda Husky, seventh, eighth grade. Heather House, seventh, and eighth grade.
Megan Julius, fourth grade. I have 10th graders, so I'm here for
Karen, would you like to introduce yourself? No? I said, would you like to introduce yourself?
Karen Tucker, school board at second grade.
Very good. Yep, Mr. Boardman.
Matt Borman, school board member. I have first grader, 2 6th graders, preschool, and middle.
Amy Hall, school board member, ninth grader, and a fifth grader.
Did we miss anybody from the Unit 11 team? Are you sure? Shannon?
I mean, I'm here, but I haven't been parent.
It's okay. You're not. All right. So what we're looking at is this. As we said before, this is our first night. We did pull everybody in one location. We'll talk about things as we go tonight when we look about what the future may hold for us as far as trying to get resources out there and have good dialogue. I did throw this up there because it's me as well. When I put up there, many adults are uncomfortable helping their child with math. It happens. I'm sure nobody in this room has trouble with helping their child with math. But there are a lot of adults out there that do struggle with math. They haven't done it in a long time. Homework comes home. I don't know what you're doing. So I threw a couple of just little jokes up there. I mean, this one, of course, everybody's done. And I know any math teacher that's in the middle school or high school, kids have done that, and they actually mark X and say that you find it. It's true. If you're not a rapper, you might not get the what. It's a song. So that's the Macklemore one. But my favorite, of course, is there's 3 kinds of people in this world: those who are good at math and those who aren't. So what I'm looking at is this is kind of segueing into this question right here is. What we want to try and do is we want to have open dialogue about math and the changes of math. And the thing that we look at here is there's a shift from math being taught as a series of calculations to math being a creative exploration of patterns and structures. And that's new. That's that conversation when people say, it's a new math. What we want to do is talk about, we're due multiple types of math. There's more than one way to solve a problem, and we're not going to say you can't do this way, you have to do it this way. What we want to try and look at is give the kids as many tools in their toolbox as we possibly can. But as we transition and look at some of the newer styles and newer strategies, it may seem as though that's the only way. And that's not what we're saying at all. All right? The thing I look at down here is we explain our answers. So the question is, kids bring home homework, and the homework is and not a worksheet. It's more of now the kid has. I'm asking my child to say, so I have to explain it, draw it, and then do it in 3 different ways. And it's true. And we'll talk about that tonight. So what we want to look at is it's not that the math is a whole new math. It's just we're trying to look at multiple ways to do it. And we're going to need you to help us through this because that transition, you can't go from one to the other because there's no right or wrong. It's what's the best way to blend for our kids to be job ready. And we're finding that a lot of our jobs, the people that we talk to outside of the school are looking at more of problem-solving, critical thinking type of questions. So I throw this question up. We're not going to solve it yet, but we will solve it before the night's over with, and you'll have an easy time to do it. But take a second and look at this question. We have fractions. Everybody loves fractions. A whole lot of fun. So a lot of us are thinking, no problem at all. We can figure it out in probably about, we have some people already figuring it out. We can figure that out in about 1 minute in multiple different ways. And there's 2 different ways you can do it. And we're going to talk about the 2 different ways you can do it. But when we see this, a lot of times people will see this and say, ooh, I have no idea where to even start. I haven't done a fraction in a long time. So we're going to come back and look at this question, but these are the types of questions that we're asking our students to answer, because these are the type of questions that we're being held accountable for on our state assessments. And we know state assessments aren't the only thing in the world, but like any situation that you have, if it's a tool that we're being evaluated on, then it's a tool that we have to at least look at, talk about, and work through. So we're really taking a lot of times looking at our assessment and the assessment rigor of our questions. What I wanted you to do, if you could, in your group, we're just going to take like a minute and a half, but take just a minute and work with your table, introduce yourself, if you have students, where they're from, the grades, and just kind of take a couple seconds to get to know each other before we move forward. All right? Go ahead. We have good giveaways. Did you get your name on the card?
Yeah.
All right, you better get that name on the card. You're going to want some of these giveaways just to play with when you get home. All right, we're going to bring it back in about 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. Sorry, I got to stay away. I know, I got to stay away. Real quick, I'm going to put a plug in. Last year, what we tried to do as a curriculum guy and trying to organize all the different curriculums that we have, we can't do it all by ourselves. So when I came in, I'm one that has to have, I like to have a council, I like to have a group, I like to have a governing body that helps me and helps us come up with decisions that everybody hears. We talk it through, we get a consensus, and then we move forward. So what we've done is we have a curriculum coordinating council. I've adjusted, our number last year was about 45 people, which was, well, too many. You get 45, like it'd be like this group, and we're all coming together, and we're going to come up and solve the world's problems. And that just, it didn't go, with too many people. So we're knocked it down to about 20, and we're going to be training for about 5 days during the year. The unfortunate thing, it's going to be most of the time during the day. So I am still looking for a couple parents that might be flexible with their working, whether they work at home or kids are somewhere. So I'll throw that out. But the other one is this. I'm also going to be looking at having a parent advisory board. Not necessarily just math, but having a parent advisory board that will meet once a quarter. And I'm looking for about 10 parents. And if we can get it to where we go from the elementary up to the high school, that's a good conversation. But what I'm looking for is I need to be able to take what we're doing with our large council and then share it with our parents. And the thing that we'll look at tonight as we kind of go a takeaway is we want to make sure that whatever we do, we get that out in a way, in a format that everybody's comfortable with. Whether it's on the web, whether it's through tweets or Facebook, or whether it's through phone calls or email. And we have people that use all of those things. Some use all, some use some use one. So what I'm looking for with this parent advisory board, though, is for people that can come in, have good dialogue, not be afraid to say, no, I don't like that, or can you tell me more? So that's the way we have to look at things, and I want to be as transparent as possible. That makes sense? So I wanted to throw that plug in real quick. The two things we talk about for me is school improvement and governance. And I'll throw this and then stop. But school improvement is the single most important part of our business in school. That's what we do. We're here to teach our students and get them ready for college and career. The other one is I believe that governance is a structure. Just like we do in our society, I think the schools have to have the same thing. So these are the two pieces that I look at when I talk about the governing body. I'm going to move real quick, and I told you I'm going to talk for about 25 minutes, and then we'll do an activity here in a minute. But we, like anyone else, are bound by standards. Some of us are comfortable with standards, some of us have seen the standards, some of us may not have seen the standards. But like anything, if I'm going to clean a restroom, there's a standard for cleaning the restroom. If I'm going to bake a cake, there's a standard for baking a cake for the most part. We have standards in our jobs and we have standards in our teaching of our education. What we look at is we've had a multitude of standards over the past 5 to 6 years. As you recall, if you can go back a little bit, in about 4 years to 5 years ago, we had a changeover from our old grade level expectations to the Common Core. Remember that? The Common Core was a national standard that was set. Missouri said, no, we're not going to do the core, we're going to write our own, which they turned into the Missouri Learning Standards. What I want to show you, though, is a lot of the Missouri Learning Standards are very similar in language to the Common Core. So what I look at is I'm open to have dialogue with people on standards because I think it's really interesting. But what I want us to look at is what is that standard? What does that standard mean? Not is it the core, or is it Missouri Learning, or is it Kentucky or Oregon? What we look at is if a student is a third grade student in Union R11, we have a set of standards. But as we look at that, most of the time, a third grade student sitting in a classroom in Portland, Oregon, is learning very similar things. And those are based off of some standards. What I put there is our Show Me standards represent the foundation. They're specific knowledge and skills that we have to work from. This is an example of third grade math. And I want you to look at something real quick. This was our older standards. Okay? So if I look over here, it says, I'm just saying third grade, you use place value understanding to round whole numbers to the nearest 10 to 100. Come over on this side. I'm going to make sure I don't squeak. Sometimes I squeak. I don't want that to happen. What we try and look at when we work with our kids, when we look at our assessment questions, a standard is only a standard until you identify how you're going to assess it. So if I want to look at just straight percentage, that's a DOK, what we call adaptive knowledge 1. I just figure out the percentage. But if I want them to figure out the percentage and then do it in a multi-step problem, that's a higher level thinking skill. Same standard, different rigor. Does that make sense? And what we're trying to look at is, as we work on the academics of mathematics, what's the best way to do that with our kids? And what's the best way to work with our parents to move forward in that? But if you look up here, it says round the whole number, it's the same, but then there's a little standard right below that says read, write, and identify whole numbers. Read, write, and identify. And that's new. So when we look at that, our students are having to write these things out. I promise we're not making it up. I promise we're not. But the thing I think we have to look at is, as we are working forward, that's the expectations, so we know that you know that that's what we're trying to work towards. The question that we'll look at is, what's the best way to get this out so you can actually see it? For those of you that want to sit down on a Friday or Saturday night and go through those standards, because I know some of you do, you're already thinking this weekend, I already have it ready to go, where should I go? And there's going to be multiple ways for us to move forward as we are looking at this. That's going to be one, having it for us on our website for you, each building website, a curricular website, whatever works best. Or, tried. This is the DESE website. And the DESE website's not always the easiest to maneuver. Some websites are, some of the times they're not. But if you go down and look at this, I always go, if you go to Parents, and over here where it says Missouri Learning Standards, because that's what they are, it'll click, it'll spin a little bit. I'm going to move this here, and I'll go Math. And I'm going to show you, this is called the expanded version. And I think the expanded version is a good version because it explains to you what that standard means for those that really want to know. Sorry. And that's where I have it here, and that's where I pulled up, for example, the third grade expanded version that we have right there, and the one that I showed you is right there. So our standards are accessible, but But again, we're talking about just third grade in one domain, one section of all of what we're working on. So those are the things that we're going to work on as we move forward. Get out of here. So, the past and the future. The one thing that we're looking at as we move forward is this. The new goal in math, a lot of people are looking at, it's called sophisticated, this is true, sophisticated thinking, which means that what we're asking our students to do is not just do a procedure, but actually work it conceptually. And we do that because a lot of the jobs today are asking our employers to do so. And that's just the little facts that are there. The shifts that we had, how we're teaching is this. We're trying to build skills and understanding, learning more about less, meaning we're trying to dive deeper on different things. We're working with numbers, and then we're looking at real-world math. The last one here is math behaviors. This is how we're looking at learning. And the one thing that we're trying to do is this. Students are actually doing more of verbal discourse. So what we're working on is in every class that a kid goes into, whether it's math, ELA, social studies, science, they have to read, they have to write, and they have to talk. And a lot of our math is, we're not used to talking math. It's, you know, when you explain a problem or something to another person, it's like anything. You're like, oh, I get that more. But kids are being asked to talk and explain, both written and verbal. And that's our written discourse, our speaking and listening standard. But these are the things that we're asking our kids to do with moving forward. About 80% of our K through 8 is using a new tool. I'm going to show you a quick little video about this tool. That's not real long. But the first part here that we're trying to look at is we're committed, no matter what we do and where we go, we're still committed to our student success. And that's one thing I want you to remember.
We found that there was a need for students to understand why their mathematics work rather than just the process. Instead of just drills and rote memorization, Eureka math helps students to experience math and connect it to the real world in order to understand math conceptually, computationally, and in application. Eureka presents math as a story, one that develops with grades pre-K through 12. Now, meeting standards, higher test scores, and better grades are just things that happen along the way.
One of my favorite parts about the Eureka program is that students get to see their own growth. So not only as a teacher do I get to see my students growing and improving with their understanding of the lessons and the standards, but the students get to see themselves improve.
My students have never talked about math in this way before. They seem to be understanding so much more than they have in the past.
So after just 1 year of the Eureka math curriculum, we're already seeing that long-term understanding and retention of information.
See higher test scores, happier, more engaged students, more successful teachers, proud parents, and more partners.
So we are looking at one of our tools that we're working on right now is Eureka. Eureka Math is a different style. It's not new, it's not old, but it is a different style. And we focus on looking at things like building a solid foundation for number sense and place value, And the things that we're going to look at real quick are two different tools, number bonds and tape diagrams. And I can tell you that when we went to school, we didn't use number bonds or tape diagrams. It's different. But I want to show you that it's just a strategy. It's just one other way to do it. It doesn't mean that one way is the only way, but it's a blending of the two. So we're going to show you that real quick before when we move forward. There is a Missouri alignment study, just so that you know. All of our Eureka math is aligned to all of our standards. Some other state may be using the Common Core. Another state might be using Kentucky standards. And each one are aligned that way. But ours are aligned straight to our Missouri Learning Standards. And they're aligned 100% across the board. And we do that just because we look for something that if our kids are being asked on a map test, like a 3rd grade or 6th grade or Algebra 1, if they're being asked to do a specific type of a question or a rigor of question, we want to make sure that what we're presenting to our kids do line up. The thing that we are working on, though, is what's the best way to balance all of our math together. I'm going to move forward just because I'm not going to take time on this one. But what I had for you was this. These standards right here is the crosswalk. And then the other standards that we have at the table are the ones that I showed you before. And each grade level, as we look at them, you can actually get on, you can see them, you can go through, you can highlight, you can do whatever you want to do. What I'm looking at is I just want you to know that they are connected in one way or the other. I put a Star Wars thing because of this. The thing I like the most about at least what Eureka Math is trying to do is it's a trilogy. That's why I put Star Wars up there, because it's a trilogy, it's 3. It starts at 1 versus 4, but it is a trilogy. And what I'm saying with that is this. It tells a story. What we try and look at least with math, is we're trying to unfold a story from kindergarten up through high school. And a lot of times when you look at math, math has not been looked at as like a book or a chapter. It's segmented. So the one thing, and the challenge that I ask you to do is, as we walk through this year and we have candid conversations about what we like and what we don't like and how things are working and some frustrations and some awesome celebrations, what I'm asking you to do, though, is think of it as K through 5 is a story of units. So we're starting that story with looking at the characters in the units. Our 6 through 8 is going into what's called a story of ratios. And the high school, or 9 through 12, is a story of functions. So what they do is lesson by lesson builds on, and year by year builds on. And the good thing about what we're trying to look at is there are no gaps between A and Z. And a lot of times what we're finding is there are gaps between 1st grade and 5th grade. Now, when we jump in like we're looking at right now, and 6th grade's doing it, and 6th grade didn't have it in 5th grade, well, guess what? It's frustrating. Why? Because the academic language is not there. When we say we're going to use a number bond to look at this, which we're going to show you, a kid says, I've never used a number bond. What is a number bond? Because in kindergarten and 1st grade, they work with number bonds. And as we talk here in a minute, I think you'll say that if you talk to any kindergarten teacher, and I've seen it in the rooms, they'll say kids are doing different things than they've done before. But it is a process. It definitely is a process. So I threw the trilogy up there because Star Wars is something that my kids like. Last one is procedural versus conceptual. I talked about this before. What we're trying to do is move and blend this. Not necessarily say you can't do this and we have to do this, but how can we do both of these? If you think about your procedural, that's what we as parents or adults are used to. I have a worksheet, I factor it out, I get an answer, and here's what it is. What we're trying to work on right now is we look at that, but there's other ways to tell that story. And what we want to do is try and make sure that we get those tools in the hands so kids can then make the decision on what works best for them. And parents understand what's going on and what looks good for them. I showed you there, Eureka Math is aligned. I'm not going to click on that because of time, but Eureka Math is aligned all the way across the board. We wouldn't just look at something that was partial. Things that we've had in the past that we've looked at, were not aligned all the way through and the rigor wasn't there. But I can guarantee you that it is aligned through here. And a lot of the kids, or the places that you'll look at, there's a lot of places out there across the whole nation that are looking and using this tool as a tool they're working on with their math. Another one is Zern. Miss Finney is going to talk real quick about that. Some of your kids might talk about that at home, right? I got on Zern. The other one is Evaluate. It's like, ooh, I took an Evaluate test. But Zern is the one that some kids are working on as well.
So as we jump into this new model of blending that procedural and that conceptual, as educators, we're always going to check where we're getting, where are the gaps at, how can we make sure, even through a transition, that we're not having those gaps. So CERN is a tool that our teachers have been using. That trilogy, it follows the same trilogy as Eureka. It's very high engaging for our students. So they get to use their devices, jump on their Chromebooks, they log on, and it reinforces the skills that are taught. So a lot of teachers are using it as kind of a double check. So teach the lesson, we do activities, we think they have it, they go on CERN, and we get some feedback to see if it's stuck. They also have challenges through Tower of Power. So you might hear your kids talk about challenges or how many bonuses I'm getting this week. And I'll jump on here real quick and just show you a little bit what it looks like. They're set up as missions, so it's kind of a fun language for our kids too. And scroll down here real fast quick. You heard Dr. Gates talk about the new tools and the new terms. So this first part, our number gym, just like a gym, they get in there and they work on the brains. So if a kiddo is struggling with the new concept of a number bond or a vertical number line, there's activities that they get on and they just practice that to help become more fluid with that. This next portion here, this is called the fluency portion. So this is the part that we're used to in school. Raise your hand if you ever took one of those sprint tests where you flip the paper over and you never saw something problems. Yes, you can. This is kind of like the new version of that. So not only is it just how fast can you do it, but how is your conceptual knowledge of it to be able to apply it later. The math chat is kind of a neat portion, and this is where we kind of get that reteach at. So the kiddos click here, and it goes through a little video segment, and we won't go through the whole thing for 10
Hey,
minutes.
learner. I'm Miss Joseph. You're with Kayla and Ethan. Today's lesson is a math chat. In math chats, we'll learn something new together. Before every math chat, make sure you have a pencil, headphones, and your Zern student notes.
It's very interactive. So as kiddos are hopping on here and they're going through their math chat, they have to interact with it at certain points. They can't just pop on the headphones, make it look like I'm working on my computer, and it's just running. So they interact with it, and then it takes them through their lesson. And then at the end, let me get back to this part for you. At the end, this is the Tower of Power. So once it goes through that math chat, they have a little refresher on what's been talked about. They go through the Tower of Power, and that shows their understanding of it. Teachers are able to get reports and see how the kids do. So this has been a great tool for us as we progress through this transition. Just to make sure that we're not leaving those gaps as we're getting a little deeper on the river.
The other one that we use, and some of you may see it or have heard your student come home and say, oh, I'm at a 47%, or I'm at an 80%, which is really good, by the way, if they are. What we look at is, Evaluate is a benchmarking tool that we use every month to look and see where kids are, and it's at the end. And these are questions, for example, of questions of I have a third grade, a sixth grade, and an eighth grade question. And if you look at third grade, this example is what we talked about before. We're going to look at in a minute. It's called a tape diagram. So if I'm taking 1/2, 1/4, 1/3, I'm looking at that picture right there. There's three sections. One shaded in. One of 3 is 1/3. That's an example of a pictorial view. So when we talk about pictures or visual math, that's what's visual math. It's nothing crazy, it's nothing way out there, but it's ways that kids can actually see what it looks like when they actually move forward. We look at a 6th grade one here, and it's not just a 5 times 7 is 5x plus 7 is 14. They actually have to write it out. So we're looking at certain words, and that's that written component. So kids are still drawing things and they're writing things. The one we look at is read, write, draw. So if any of your students might have said anything like a read, write, draw, that's what they do. They read the question, they write out what the answer is supposed to be if we're missing it, and then they actually draw out the components. And that's one thing that we'll look at as we move forward. And I know it might seem silly sometimes if you can say, I can do that in my head. And that's true, but a lot of times when you're doing a problem-solving problem that's multi-step, you're going from here to here. Having that conceptual component out there already will help you then take that answer and move it to the further side. So that's the one thing we look at there. 8th grade gets into another whole realm, but I just want you to see the stair step of what that looks like. But Evaluate's a tool that we use, and it's worked pretty well for us as far as predicting and looking at where our kids are. Here's what we're going to look at real quick. There's a couple models. The 2 models we're going to look at is, I'm going to go quickly. I do talk fast, I apologize, but an hour goes real quick. We are going to look at what a number bond, because I've said this word a couple different times, and a tape diagram. And I think those are the 2 that somebody says, I've heard this thing, but I haven't seen this thing. So there's a sheet at your table that looks like this. It's called Giving Students a Choice. There's a front and back. And the answers are there. However, I know that you're going to try and work on it yourself, but if you needed to look at it, you could. But that's a one that's there, and I'll refer to that with the first one. Ms. Wall, due to time, you want me to kind of move through the number bond and then maybe focus on the tape diagram? Are you comfortable with that? Okay. So I'm going to ask you to look at something real quick. I'm going to forego my little part with number bonds, but here's what we're looking at. The decomposition of numbers is what we look at with a number bond. So if you look at this right here, and you look at our first numbers, you take 8. What they look at with 8 is they can break that number down. So 8 can be 3 or a 5. This is where we get into a mental math component. And the things that I think that sometimes the first time a parent will see this, they'll say, ooh, that's some crazy stuff. But it's just another way to look at it. And it'll make sense here in a minute, I promise. But there's 2 ones we're going to look at. The first one is, we'll break down, we have 8, and we look at 3 and 5. So everybody see that for our first step? To the right, then the students can see that 7 plus 8 is the same as 10 plus 5. What we try and look at is we break things down so that you get numbers that are consistent that you look at.
The top row. Yeah.
You drop one down below. I know I'm going quick, but I just want to get. You drop one down below. Now we're looking at a bigger number. So I'm going to add 998 plus 337. 998 and 337. Well, one's an odd number, and odd numbers are a lot more difficult than even numbers in my mind. But what we look at is, I know that 2 more than 998 is 1,000. I'm rounding up to 1,000. Are we with it? So I'm going to take 2 away from my 337. Well, what's the other number? 335. So I know that 998 plus 2 is 1,000. And 1,000 plus 335 is 1,335. Now, again, it's a different way, and it's not a way that we spent a lot of time looking at, but that's going to be the first little nugget that you're going to get, because you're going to play with some later and as we work things in the next month or 2. All right? Because I have everybody's email, so I'll send you some homework, and you can work on those. It is a different way, but what we're looking at is a lot of times kids have to take a mental model. If I'm a waiter and I go out and somebody says you have a certain number and I have a certain number of tables, I don't have enough time to actually break them down. But I can average things over to try and see what my numbers are. So that's what we look at with the number bond. And I know I didn't give it the best in the world, but that's what we look at with this one. Grade 4, you can work it right here. Gets a little bit more working with fractions. And then grade 6 and 7, now we're looking at positive and negative. What I'm going to ask you to do is humor me for about 3 minutes. We're going to finish up With the tape diagram, it's the last thing we're doing, I promise. And then we do activities and with what Tracy has set up for us. But I just want you to watch what and how to use a tape diagram to work things. And then we're going to do the problem that I had at the very beginning. And you will do it in less than a minute.
With the tape diagram form?
With the tape diagram form. Are you ready? Unless, except for some of them already that's already done it. You can't show the answer though. All right? I know. I already saw him working it, and I'm like, seriously. And I went over and he has it. I'm like, no. This would be a typical lesson. I just want you to see a typical lesson. She's not the most fun person in the world, but it's a lesson, okay?
And as we do these notice of laws, we're going to be following the steps that we draw, right? So the first problem reads as follows. Michelle reads for 37 minutes on Monday. She reads for 22 minutes on Tuesday. How many minutes does she read in all? This will be a part folder, and we will take it step by step for the children. The first clue is Michelle reads for 37 minutes on Monday. We would represent this with a bar labeled 37 minutes, and we'll put it down on here for Monday. Our next clue is she reads for 22 minutes on Tuesday. I'll represent that with the second part of the tape model, and I'll make that piece a little shorter because it's 22 instead of 37. We'll label it like that, and we'll put 2 for Tuesday. Our question is, how many minutes does she read in all? Right here for our target sets, I will write, she reads for blank minutes. I'll represent that question. The bracket here in a question mark. So this is a full model to solve. We will add our 37 and our 22 to get 59. Fill in our blank. She reads for 59 minutes. Next, we'll do a fourth grade problem.
There's 3. So it's less than 4 minutes.
Jen has
Third, fourth,
50 stickers
and fifth grade. So you see that's
Her older
yeah.
sister Martha has 3 times as many stickers in her collection. How many stickers does Marcia have? This will be a comparison model because there are 2 individuals in the problem. We have Jan and we have Marcia. We'll begin again with the target sentence. Marcia has blank stickers. And we read our target sentence first to help focus the student's attention on what question we're trying to answer. So that's our first clue. Our first clue is that Jan has 53 stickers in her collection. I will label the bar for Jan. The length of the bar is 53, the end is 53. What's our next clue? Her older sister Marcia has 3 times as many stickers in her collection. So if Jan's end is 1, Marcia's bar will be 3 times as long, or 3 units. Okay. We don't know how many stickers Marcia has yet, but as long as we know the value of 1 unit, it would be easy for us to find the value of the 4 units together if we wanted to know how many stickers they had in all. It would also be very simple to find the difference between Marcia's and Jan's stickers. But in this case, our question is, how many stickers does Marcia have? We'll represent that, again, with a bracket and a question mark. So now we have all the information in our problem. And we can show the children that 1 unit is 53. Then the 3 units representing Marcia's sticker collection would be 3 times 53, or
or 159? So Marcia has 159 stickers.
One more,
Now we'll go to a fifth grade example.
because there's a fraction here.
Again, we read the problem together with the students. Matthew has 14 blue marbles. His blue marbles make up 2/5 of his total number of marbles. How many marbles does Matthew have? We'll begin again with our target sentence to focus the student's attention. Matthew has blank marbles. So this will again be a form of a part whole model, a fractional part whole model. We'll use our first clue. Matthew has 14 blue marbles. I'll represent that with the bar like this. We know the length of that bar. That bar is 14, representing the blue marbles. It also represents 2/5, or 2 of 5 equal pieces. That means we need to divide this section into 2 pieces. This will be 2 of the 5 equal pieces. So it's not any more of these units to need to draw. 2/5 and 3/5 would make our whole. And our question is, how many marbles does Matthew have? So we want to know the entire length of the bar. Our question mark would go here. Again, we're going to solve for the unit. We can see from our model that 2 units are 14. So 1 unit must be 7. Our question mark shows us that we want to know the value of 5 of the units together. So 5 units equals 5 times 7 equals 35. Matthew has 35 marbles. So those are some simple part whole and comparison models for 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade.
So, here's the question. I'm going to ask you to work this real quick. Using a tape diagram, we'll walk it through. And I just want you to visualize this. So Zoe had some stamps. She gave 2/5 of the stamps to Lionel. 2/5. So what do you already know when thinking about a tape diagram and 2/5? How many boxes do you need to make? 5. How many do you color in? 2. So that's your 2/5 on a tape diagram. Making sense so far? All right. She used 1/3 of the remaining stamps to mail thank you notes. Now, I've used 2. How many are total? How many do I have left? 1/3 of 3 is how many? 1. I'm just saying. So different ways that people do their tape diagrams. If you follow this right here, this person actually rewrote down below and drew the line and added that box. So you can see now there's 3 out of those 5. She has 14 stamps left. So 2, 1, there's 14 stamps left. So how many stamps are in 1 unit? 7. How many boxes total? 5 times 7 is? I know. You're like, it's a lot easier the way I did it. True. But listen, if you think about that, when you first saw that problem at the beginning of tonight, there are some of us, because I'm telling you, I was one of them. If I looked at that right off the bat with a fraction, I'm like, whoo, I don't know. I don't know. And a lot of our kids are the same way when they see that. So sometimes kids can do the traditional common denominator, and we work that as well. But other students need to see a visual. So what we're trying to do is, as we go through and look at that, we're trying to say there's multiple ways to do a math problem. But we're working on with the type of questions our kids ask these days, are being asked of, they read it, they write it, and they draw it. Because a lot of our questions are multi-stepped. Now that's just one, but my point on that was, that's one tool. It's a tape diagram. And at the beginning, we're like, I've never seen it before. That's the craziest thing. And you may still think that's the craziest thing in the world. But as kids are working that, they really do see that it helps them out. And there's multiple tools. That's just one little tool. And I've taken like all of your our time, and I'm going to stop, and I'm going to turn it over to my colleague, Miss Wall, real quick, and let her talk about what she has for you to finish up with and look at and talk about and win. It was all about the prizes.
And I'm going to be really quick.
Can I use the microphone or not?
Sure. Just don't touch anything that'll shock.
Okay, so I'm just going to be really fast, and I'm just going to first off say you have not filled out an index card with your first and last name. If you would do so really quickly, and then the lovely ladies back there with the blue bucket are going to come by and pick that up so we can get attendance prizes given out. At your table, you'll see in your bucket, no, you can't put it in there twice. At your tables by grade level, we have some activities that you're welcome to stay and do if you'd like. It's just so that you can see. I know we're running close on time now, so if you don't have to, obviously we can't force you to stay here and play with them. But if you kind of want to see what the kids use in stations in the classroom, they're all based off standards. You can look through the buckets that are at your table and just kind of look at some of the activities that are there and what your child might use in the classroom in a math station. And then there's also on the little plastic table tent that's there, it explains to you the standards that are addressed in some of those activities that are in your table, at your table. A couple things that I just wanted to, before you get started playing a game, if you're going to play a game, is make note of, is that you can make some really cool things at home that are super easy and super cheap for you to use with math. And there's two things that you can use at home that are really cheap and really can go across the grade levels to use in math. And one of those is a deck of cards, and the other one is a pair of dice. And we have some dice for you to take with you this evening. The other one is a deck of cards. I'm sure everybody's got a deck of cards laying around. You can play so many things besides just war with a deck of cards and go fish or rummy or those things. You can do math at practice. You can make multi-digit numbers and subtract those. There's so many different things, and we have some information for you to take with you that has some different game ideas to do with decks of cards and dice, and they're grade level specific. We also have a take-home pack with some activities for you to take home with you that you can play with your students at home. And then there's like a at-home math kit that you can build at home. It just has some different things and some ideas on some mathematical reasoning activities that you can do at home. I wanted to show you this page, and I'm not sure, I think Dr. Hayes is going to talk about the parent support too, but I'm just going to touch on it really quick. This page is sitting at the back table back there, and if you see those table tents on the display boards in the black back there, on those boards, there is a parent guide, and on that parent guide, your teacher should be sending home with you at the beginning of each module the parent guide that goes with that module that your student will be working on. And there's all kinds of information on those parent guides. It's the focus, it has words to know, sample problems, tips that you can use at home to help your student with math. So those are back there for you to take a look, so if your student's not bringing home one of the parent guides, you can ask them about it. And then there's also this sheet back there, and this is going to explain to you how you can get on the Grapevines website and sign up for a parent account, and it gives you access to all of the Eureka materials that you would need to support your student at home. And then as well as all of the activities that are in the bucket at your table, they come from a website called Teachers Pay Teachers, and that's like our teachers' kind of hidden little gem that we use to find activities and things. Parents have access to that too. It's free to anyone. You can make an account, and every activity that's at the table tonight were free. You didn't have to pay to buy those activities. Those were all free activities that I got off of Teachers Pay Teachers. So you're welcome to get on that website as well if you want to print any kind of skill-based activities for you to do at home. And then there's some other websites listed by grade levels that are some great websites that you can get on at home as well. And I am the K through 6 math instructional coach, but I am also willing to help all the way across the board. So if you ever have any questions about your child's math learning or anything, please feel free to email me, or you can contact me at school anyway if you need assistance with that. And I think, did
could you bring? Oh wait, Miss Bergman, can someone bring me the bucket? Okay. Everyone to touch a bucket. On the back table back there, there's some really fun prizes. Now, I'm sure you guys are probably looking at that red and white seated.
That abacus-looking thing.
The thing back there, and some of you are thinking that's an abacus. They call those a wreck and wreck now. Did you have a card read?
And you can make your own at home.
You can. So that is a wreck and wreck, and if you have a K through 6th grade student, they have probably used a wreck and wreck in their classroom if they're using Eureka resources right now. And then we also have a called dice. There's some Unifix cubes. Can you hold those up? All kinds of fun things back there. You can, once your name gets drawn, you can go back to that table and pick a prize and take it home with you. You want to draw the prize, the name? This is so exciting. Brad M-A-U-R-E-R. Maurer. Brad Maurer. Oh, Brad Maurer, first winner.
Way to go, Brad.
Way to go, Brad.
You know you want that wreck and wreck. You know you want it. I'm just saying. Don't be afraid. Don't be afraid.
Everybody wants the wreck and wreck. Actually, kids really do love to count on that. Brian's story.
Brian's like, yep, that's what I want.
Yep.
Brian wants that wreck and wreck too. Brian wants some tape diagrams. I know. No?
Joel Thompson. Come on down. Joel Thompson. Oh, he's on the telephone. He's taking an important phone call. So if someone wants to accept his award for him. April Williams. We'll draw a couple more names and then we'll just kind of go free for all. Because I got lots.
Dan.
All right, yay.
Dan, you can have that wreck and wreck. Lynn Davis.
Lynn Davis. Zachary Gillihan. Jamie Keith. Is it Keith? Keith? Jamie Keith? Time? Jeff Harris. Kara Alexander. Oh, I forgot to mention, those little tabs back there, they kind of have a mishmash of everything in them on the left-hand side that those guys are picking up right there. Yeah, they got like Unifix cubes in them, cloths, all kinds of good things. Anna Gertie. Lucky over at that table. That's a lucky table, Sarah. Kristen Brueggemann. Kristen Golan. Julie Vanderman. Okay, last one. And then we'll just let them. Come on. Greg Pope. If you did not get a prize, and there's stuff left on the table on the way out, I have another bucket that's full of stuff too. So there's plenty if everybody wants to grab it.
Now, if you did not sign up, with the Google, that's fine. That's fine. But what we would like to do is somehow, some way, if we do not have your email or some sort of contact information, let me know before you go. A couple different things. I know it was the first night. There's so many things I could have done different. I know. But the good thing is like not having on the night that we have 300 people coming for a chili supper, but it did smell good for quite some time. What we're looking for is this. We want you to know that we want to have open dialogue about whatever it is we're teaching. It just so happens we're talking about math. We're going to do the same thing when it comes to literacy, because there's as much going on there as the other. Science, we've changed our standards over science. Talk about a big change. There's going to be some stuff going on there as well. So as we start looking at that, and then our social studies is changing in the next year. So as we start talking about what we're doing, we want to try and have as many open dialogue conversations as possible. I will make sure that we communicate out with you to see what you want, the best way to have different ones, and then also the best way to communicate via our website for you on what you would like to see. So that's what we want to do on the first one of these tonight, is get everybody here, have conversation. If you have questions, make sure you write them on your sticky note with your email address or a phone number on there so I can contact you personally. And again, my name is Scott. I'm always available. If anybody is interested in being on the Parent Advisory Board, make sure that you let me know. So, Heather, there's a lot of us out here I know I worked with last year as well. So I think that Parent Advisory Board is really going to help us keep things consistent and balanced as we have been throughout the year. Any open questions that you might have right now before you go back and peruse all the interesting items that we have set back there? I'm here. Come talk to me. Call me. Email me. Whatever. But thank you so much for coming tonight, and we look forward to having a lot more interesting conversation in the future.